journalists going to do the same thing?
Why are you putting it in air
Are they going to think more and talk less? Maybe
Yeah.
think before they print
You know what
something?
led me to this? This sounds goofy, but I've been listening on tape to the Grant book, the book about President Grant. And it's just awesome to actually dig in on history and sometimes get out of the daily news cycle and look back. And, you know, Grant was just so underestimated and ends up becoming president of the United States. It kind of reminds me of the person in the Oval Office right now in the campaign, time and time again. The media and others saying he'll never make it. He'll never get the nomination. He'll never actually win. Look at the economy. Look how things are turning around. We've got big stuff heading into 2018.
Well, that's what we want to talk to you about. The president saying much more to come in 2018, tweeting about the fact that there's been a lot of winning, a lot of good things happening in 2018. Here's a tweet from the president about the economic surge. He says, jobs are kicking in and companies are coming back to the U.S. Unnecessary regulations and high taxes are being dramatically cut, and it will only get better. Much more to come. Ed, if you look into your crystal ball, what do you think is to come in 2018?
I think there's 4 eyes. In terms of the big issues of 2018. President is getting the economy turning around, as we're saying. That's because of the regulations he cut. Now, all of a sudden, the tax cut. You've got infrastructure, immigration, insurance, and impeachment, okay? Why those 4? Peter's on the Hill a lot, right? Infrastructure. This is something Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have been talking about going back to the Obama days, how they want to spend money, rebuild our roads and bridges. And yet they haven't talked a lot about it. And the White House, frankly, hasn't talked enough about it either. They promised to do it. They've got to get going on that in 2018. That could be bipartisan. Immigration. The president tweeted about this a couple days ago. Sure, deal with DACA by March. Deal with the Dreamers. But what about the wall that he promised in the campaign? What about other measures to crack down on illegal immigration? If Democrats want DACA, the president's right that he's going to have to get something out of that as well. And then on insurance, I think Republicans have to realize they promised moderate Republican Susan Collins that they were going to do something bipartisan to stabilize the insurance markets to get her vote on tax cuts.
That's a tension because Susan Collins wants to stabilize markets and everyone else wants to repeal the rest of Obamacare.
Sure. So if you're going to repeal it, then what are you going to do? Okay, and if you're not going to be able to repeal and replace, as the Republicans failed to do in 2017, you do have to do something to stabilize the markets, but also let's get these premium spikes calmed down. That's what really affects our viewers. I mean, when you have states in Arizona, when the president talked about in the campaign, premiums increasing by 116%. You know,
can't Trump do some of this? Can't he do a lot of these things through Health and Human Services, just through regs, not necessarily having to go through Congress?
Some of it, but you're not going to deal with these massive premium spikes without something dramatic legislative-wise. And then I threw impeachment in there because are the Democrats going to work with the president on any of those 3 eyes, or are they just going to be talking about, you know, Comey and Mueller and impeachment, and we don't like this guy and we're not going to work with him? Because
great question.
President has a challenge as well to reach across the aisle in 2018, and he said before he left for Florida, back in the Oval Office, signing the tax cuts into law, and said, I've got a big agenda, and I do want to work with Democrats. He's going to have to follow up on that.
He wants to. Can they get out of their own way and actually do it?
Right.
Point.
But the Democrats are not talking about these issues. They're just talking about how much they hate Donald Trump.
They don't want him to. They don't want him to succeed. If he fails, then they're in a better position for re-election.
And if you remember, a couple weeks ago, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi blew off a White House meeting that they were going to negotiate a spending deal because they didn't like a tweet from the president where he said he was never going to cave. Now the president is saying this: I use social media not because I like to, but because it is the only way to fight a very dishonest and unfair press, in quotations, now referred to as a fake news media. Phony and non-existent sources are being used more often than ever. Many stories and reports a pure fiction. And Ed, I know that, I mean, you see this. I've gone to Trump rallies and I'll be standing there on the riser after he talks for an hour and a half, and then I will listen to someone from another outlet stand next to me, and their understanding of something that was just said is
a little different than the
fact. You know, there are things that were not said that are being introduced, and so...
Well, I just find it funny that normally here you've got Pete channeling the president and saying, you know, air quotes on the press. Now you got the president with that tweet, you know, maybe channeling Pete a little bit and doing the air quotes that Pete loves so much when he's talking about
But they've taken a big hit on their credibility in 2016.
There's been a big hit on credibility, and I was asked, okay, come to the couch with your favorite tweet of the year, because the president likes to go around the filter. Here's mine, and there are so many to choose from. Despite the constant negative press, Kofifi. The reason why that's my favorite tweet is because do you know how many hours were spent? And people are still kind of talking about, what did he mean? What was that really?
You never explained it.
You know, he never says Kofefe.
I
We
said
don't know how to pronounce it.
But it's just, he probably just made a mistake. He probably just hit the button too soon or something.
We've all done that.
But there was media analysis of it. What is he saying? Was there some hidden message?
Well, and remember there was a Sean Spicer briefing where he was asked 80 different ways about it, and he kept saying, we know what he meant in the White
You know
House.
what? It's so funny because Barack Obama was sort of this young president with, you know, this really young social media team, and his social media, his Twitter feed was pretty boring because I think other people were doing very conventional. Here's Grandpa Donald Trump, and you know we can't live without seeing what is going on with his Twitter feed. He's moving the news cycle.
Well, look, I'm going to have to get to bed soon because I'm going to be here as part of the New Year's Eve coverage, so I can't stay too long. But I wanted to tell you about something, so 8 p.m. Eastern it starts. It's going to be with Lisa Booth and Dean Cain. But we decided, you know, this year has been talked about a lot, and Pete, you were talking about this a moment ago. All of the NFL players that were kneeling, not standing for the anthem, questions about, you know, respecting our veterans. And we thought, you know, why not, as part of our coverage, have some of our brave men and women in uniform and those who have served and are now trying to transition and benefit from this improving economy. There is a bakery in Washington, D.C. called Dog Tag Bakery. And they mostly, not completely, but mostly hire veterans, military spouses, caregivers, and it's a nonprofit. And they try to get these vets transitioning from war to the home front. And I talked to a lot of these veterans. I went down and interviewed them last week, and they were talking about how the hardest part is coming home, and when you're at war, everything's sort of laid out for you. Here's how we're going to do it. They've got the commanders telling, all of a sudden you're all alone, and you've got to make that transition. Take a look.
Veterans like Peter Scott say the hardest part of their time in the military was not necessarily serving in war. It was getting out and moving on. He came out of the Army with post-traumatic stress.
I spent about 3-4 years kind of soul searching.
Finding yourself?
Finding myself. You start back at the bottom. It takes time to build up that competency and build up that experience.
Now, Scott has left Dog Tag and is running his own nonprofit.
So what our program is really meant to say is, like, dream big. Let's find your passion. Let's kind of ignite this human spirit again and help create a plan of moving forward.
So Dog Tag Bakery, because of the dog tags, the military identification that our men and women in uniform wear. And the reason why we want to highlight them, we're going to actually have a couple of those veterans live with us in Times Square tonight,
Awesome.
is that we're talking about this rising economy. We're talking about the optimism all across America. And yet veterans unemployment, veterans homelessness, still huge problems in this country that have to be dealt with. And so we thought, you know, we're going to have great music. We're going to have a lot of fun in Times Square tonight. Lisa Booth, Dean Cain are going to be joining me.
Sounds like a fun night.
And then Kennedy and Jesse Waters, you know that guy?
Yeah.
Waters, this is my world, that whole spiel. He'll be out there too. We love him. And but we thought, you know, let's also bring some of our most courageous, our bravest out there as well.
Sounds like a fun night.
We can't.
We'll be watching from our homes.
I need a new jacket.
Yeah, bring a warm jacket.
I'm not wearing a suit. It's
Take
the
a nap.
first time on
Take a
Fox
nap
I'm not wearing a
beforehand.
suit. I'm going to be casual, and I'm going to just be in
I don't
layers.
think I've ever seen you.
Good.
Yeah.
Not in a suit.
That's a tease.
And
You're going to be
hydrate.
watching?
I am.
All right.
Hydrate.
Of course, I can't
Hydrate.
get off
Hydrate.
Okay.
All right,
Love it.
now to
Great
your
stuff on
headlines.
the vet stuff.
Fox News.